Gary, Indiana, 1958. A small house on Jackson Street held a secret the world would soon discover. Michael Joseph Jackson entered a family where music wasn't just passion, it was survival. His father Joe saw something in his children that most parents only dream about: raw, undeniable talent. But Joe's methods were brutal. Rehearsals lasted until midnight. Mistakes earned beatings. Love came with conditions attached. Michael was 5 years old when he first stood before a microphone, his voice impossibly mature for such a tiny body. The Jackson 5 exploded onto the scene like a supernova. Ed Sullivan. Soul Train. Screaming fans who couldn't get enough of the little boy with the enormous voice and electric moves. Michael's childhood evaporated under stage lights. While other kids played baseball and rode bikes, he memorized choreography and hit impossible notes. His brothers were talented, but Michael was different. Special. Cursed with genius. By 11, he was already carrying the weight of his family's dreams on shoulders that should have been carefree. The money poured in. The fame grew impossible to comprehend. But behind those bright eyes and that megawatt smile lived a boy who desperately wanted what he could never have: normalcy. He watched other children through limousine windows, separated by glass and circumstance. His father's hand was always there, guiding, pushing, sometimes striking. Joe created a monster of success, but the price was Michael's innocence. The world fell in love with the performer, but nobody asked about the boy inside. Nobody wondered what happened when the music stopped and the crowds went home. Michael learned early that love from strangers felt safer than love from family. Applause never disappointed him. Fans never told him he wasn't good enough. The stage became his sanctuary, and fame became his identity. But identity built on performance is a house built on sandpoint. 1982 marked the year Michael Jackson stopped being a star and became a god. Thriller didn't just break records, it shattered every conception of what popular music could achieve. The album sold 1 million copies a week. Every single became a phenomenon. The music videos weren't just promotional tools, they were cinematic events that stopped the world. MTV had barely played black artists before Michael kicked down the door with moves so electric they couldn't look away. The Motown 25 performance changed everything. That moonwalk lasted only a few seconds, but it became the most replicated dance move in human history. Michael glided backward across the stage, defying physics and common sense, and the world collectively lost its mind. He wasn't just performing, he was transforming what the human body could express. The white glove, the red jacket, the single sequin sock, every choice became iconic. He understood that pop stars were modern mythology, and he dressed the part. But success at this altitude comes with oxygen deprivation. The pressure to follow Thriller was crushing. How do you top perfection? How do you satisfy a world that expects miracles? Michael retreated deeper into his own universe. Neverland Ranch became his fortress, a fantasyland built to recapture the childhood stolen from him. He filled it with amusement park rides, a zoo, and an innocence that felt increasingly desperate. The media loved him and devoured him simultaneously. Every quirk became a headline. The oxygen chamber story, the Elephant Man's bones, most were exaggerations or outright lies, but Michael sometimes fed the circus himself. He understood that mystery maintained fascination. Yet the cost of being mysterious is isolation. His appearance began changing dramatically. Plastic surgeries multiplied. His skin grew lighter, sparking rumors and accusations he would spend years trying to explain. Vitiligo, he said. A disease that strips pigmentation. But the world didn't always believe him. The boy from Gary, Indiana, was disappearing beneath layers of transformation. Fame loved every version of Michael Jackson. But life was asking him a question he couldn't answer. Who are you when the music stops? The accusations came like an earthquake in 1993, splitting Michael's world along fault lines that would never heal. A 13-year-old boy claimed inappropriate behavior. The details were horrifying. The media frenzy was instantaneous and merciless. Michael Jackson, the man who sang about healing the world, now stood accused of the most heinous betrayal imaginable. He denied everything with desperation in his voice that sounded like truth or excellent acting. Nobody could agree which. The investigation consumed him. Police raided Neverland, photographing his body for evidence. The humiliation was complete. This wasn't scandal, this was crucifixion. Michael settled the civil case for over $20 million, a decision that would haunt him forever. His lawyers called it pragmatic. The public called it guilt. The criminal investigation dissolved, but the damage was permanent. His image, once untouchable, now carried a stain that wouldn't wash away. Tours continued. Albums released. But the magic was contaminated. Parents who once encouraged their children to emulate Michael now pulled them away. Radio stations reconsidered their playlists. Sponsors quietly backed away. The isolation that had always been part of his life became absolute. He married Lisa Marie Presley in 1994, Elvis's daughter, in what seemed like a desperate attempt at normalcy and redemption. The marriage felt performative, another spectacle for public consumption. It lasted less than 2 years. Then came Debbie Rowe, his dermatologist's nurse, who gave him 2 children before disappearing from the narrative. Nothing in Michael's life seemed authentic anymore. Everything appeared calculated, managed, and ultimately hollow. His music grew darker, angrier. History contained tracks dripping with paranoia and defiance. "They don't care about us," screamed his persecution. But even his protest felt theatrical, as if real emotion had been replaced by its performance. The painkillers started or perhaps intensified. Sleep became impossible without chemical assistance. His body, punished by decades of impossible dancing and constant surgery, required management. Doctors surrounded him, some ethical, others merely compliant. Michael was trapped in a nightmare of his own construction, where fame provided everything except peace. 2003 brought a documentary that Michael believed would restore his image. Instead, Living with Neverland provided the rope for his public hanging. Martin Bashir's film showed Michael holding hands with children, admitting they slept in his bed, though nothing improper occurred, he insisted. The world watched in horror and fascination. Months later, new accusations emerged. Another boy, another family, another nightmare. This time, prosecutors wouldn't let it go. The trial began in 2005, and for 5 months, Michael Jackson sat in a Santa Maria courtroom while his life was dissected. The prosecution painted him as a predator who used fame to groom victims. The defense portrayed him as a damaged man-child exploited by opportunistic families seeking fortune. Witnesses described Neverland as a trap. Others called it paradise. The boy's testimony was damning. Michael's supporters were passionate. The truth seemed impossible to locate beneath layers of celebrity, trauma, and competing narratives. Michael arrived at court in pajamas one day after a hospital visit, looking fragile and defeated. The image circled the globe, the king of pop reduced to a sick, desperate man fighting for his freedom. His fans gathered outside with signs and prayers. Inside, lawyers argued about Jesus juice and adult magazines and whether genius excused peculiarity. The jury deliberated. Michael waited at Neverland, reportedly unable to eat, certainly unable to imagine life if the verdict went wrong. June 13, 2005. Not guilty on all counts. 14 charges, 14 acquittals. Michael was free. But freedom is relative when your reputation is destroyed. He left America shortly after, unable to bear the country that had both crowned and crucified him. He wandered through Bahrain, Ireland, Las Vegas, searching for something he'd lost decades earlier. The trial had cost him $50 million and whatever remained of his spirit. Fame still loved Michael Jackson. His catalog still sold millions. His influence remained undeniable. But life had delivered its final verdict long before that jury spoke. He was free in law but imprisoned by everything else. June 25, 2009. Los Angeles burned under summer heat. Inside a rented mansion on Carrollwood Drive, Michael Jackson was preparing for something impossible, a comeback. The This Is It concerts promised 50 shows in London. 50 chances to prove he was still the king. 50 opportunities to feel the love that only audiences could provide. But his body was failing. Years of abuse, surgical, pharmaceutical, psychological, had reduced him to a shadow. He weighed barely more than 100 pounds. Sleep eluded him completely without propofol, a surgical anesthetic no person should use at home. His doctor, Conrad Murray, administered it anyway, transforming a bedroom into an operating theater without proper equipment or ethics. Michael had spent his entire life chasing sleep and finding only performance. Now he needed unconsciousness just to rest. That morning, Murray gave him the drug and left the room. Minutes passed. Michael's breathing slowed, then stopped. His heart, exhausted from 50 years of impossible demands, simply quit. Murray's desperate CPR came too late. Paramedics arrived to find a legend dying on a bed surrounded by medical equipment that should never have been there. By afternoon, the world knew. Michael Jackson was dead at 50. The news spread faster than anything in human history. Websites crashed. Television networks abandoned programming. Strangers wept in the streets. The man who had been ridiculed, accused, and abandoned suddenly became sacred again. Death has a way of simplifying narratives. The scandals faded behind the music. The accusations became footnotes to genius. Millions mourned, remembering only the moonwalk, the voice, the joy he'd manufactured for them. His memorial service drew 1 billion viewers. His music sales exploded beyond anything he'd achieved while living. Fame, which had loved him so completely, now loved him perfectly. Death gave Michael what life never could: peace from judgment and unconditional adoration. But the tragedy remains carved in every note he ever sang. Michael Jackson conquered the world but never defeated the demons planted in childhood. He healed millions with his art but couldn't heal himself. Fame loved him. Life did not. And in the end, neither could save him.